The next session is on rooftop solar beyond net metering. In this session, we will try to understand how the market is expected to evolve over the next few years in terms of business models, system configuration, technology, and regulatory environment. For this discussion, we have with us Mr. Arijit Mitra, Head of Distributed Generation at LONGi Solar, Mr. Adarsh Das, Co-founder and CEO, Sunsource Energy, Mr. Karthikeyan B, Head of Business Development for Solar Rooftop at Tata Power, Mr. Anand, Marathe, Deputy General Manager, Group Sustainability, Mahindra Group, Mr. Rahul Dasari, MD, Berkeley Energy Commercial Industrial Solutions, and Mr. Ashwin Gambhir, Fellow at Prayas Energy Group. Wish to India Senior Manager, Mridul Chadda, would steer the conversation and moderate this session. Please send us your questions in the chat box and we will try to answer them towards the end of the session. Over to you, Mridul.
Thank you, Ankita. A very warm welcome to all of the panelists and the attendees. So I'll quickly give a background of what the panel discussion would be about, and then we'll jump into the panel discussion. So, as we know, rooftop solar is one of the most attractive markets. It is one of the most cheap sources of power because the power is generated and consumed at the same point. There are lower T&D losses, and in many cases, it is much more attractive compared to the utility scale solar projects in terms of the total cost of delivery. The government has taken several measures to promote rooftop solar market. This includes several incentives, subsidies through discoms, etc. But the recent policy flip-flops at the state as well as the central level have created a sense of uncertainty across the sector. This uncertainty, along with several other factors, have impacted the installed capacity, the capacity addition as well, which is visible from the recent trends. Even before the COVID pandemic hit, the capacity addition fell by around 24% in financial year 2020. Another major trend that has been witnessed is the decline in the share of OPEX capacity, which has declined to less than 30% for the first time in 3 years. We feel that the small ticket size and long conversion cycles are some of the factors that is driving installers away from the OPEX model, but we'll dive deep into this trend and the possible reasons. Again, on the policy front, many states have withdrawn net banking and banking options for the CNI consumers over the last couple of years. And many states are expected, some of them have already implemented additional charges, some of them are considering additional charges, which may dent the capacity addition, the overall sentiment in the market. On the flip side though, we have seen strong M&A activity from the investors, especially over the last 1 year. Leading rooftop-focused installers have strengthened their position by raising millions of dollars, even as the utility scale focused companies are looking to exit the rooftop market. Several companies, as I mentioned, have been able to raise millions of dollars in funding. So is it the case of uniformity leading to certainty, leading to investor confidence? We'll again dig deeper into this trend. Even after this uncertainty and decline in capacity addition, there are several pockets of potential growth across the market. So based on the savings over the grid tariff, the policy and regulatory framework, ease of implementation on ground, and the overall CNI power demand, we have ranked some major states on the basis of their growth potential. So these rankings are for the near term, with Maharashtra clearly outscoring many other states, given the excellent business case available in that state, primarily driven by the high tariffs. Gujarat is also one of the leading states in terms of potential growth, even though the tariffs are lower, but there is regulatory clarity and ease of implementation, as well as the share of CNI consumers in the state's power demand is more than 50%, which makes it an attractive market. So I would say there are several opposing factors that are at play within the rooftop market. And during this session, we'll try to understand which of these factors may outplay others and play a major role in shaping up the rooftop market in the near future. We have segregated the panel discussion into three major segments. We'll first start with the policy landscape. We'll move on to technology and business models. And finally, we'll check the trends in system configurations, how the recent developments may impact the system configurations. So each of these segments will have 4 to 5 questions, and I'll request the panelists to restrict their responses to 3 to 3.5 minutes each. So let's start the panel discussion. Karthikeyan, I'd like to come to you first. As I mentioned, there have been several policy changes in the central and state level. We saw MOP starting with 5 kilowatt, moving to 10, and finally settling on 500 kilowatt. What do you see the impact of such flip-flops and the 500 kilowatt limit on the overall market potential?
Great. Nice, Mridul. Thanks a lot. See, on this policy per se, so this is not new what is happening today. We have been seeing ever since right from 2011-12 onwards, there's always continuous changes in the policy, right? Certain policies help the renewable to grow, solar to grow, and many policies have put a brake onto the growth path as such. So before getting into that, just maybe 1 minute, we'll have to step back and then look at total solar and renewable as in the holistic way. Why all this, globally, why there is an aggressive push towards renewable? Right? It's basically to cut down on the global warming. This is everywhere it's happening. One side flooding, another side drought. Everywhere this issue is there. That is where in 2016 or so, it was a clear mandate in Paris agreement. Many countries have signed, more than 175 countries signed, looking at the long term. What does that need to be achieved, right? So even India signed up, stating that 2 degrees will bring down before the industry level, and then even our GHS emission, we want to cut down by 1/3 from 2005 level. So when that is the goal and that is the mission, then we need to look at what other activities will cut down this. One, the best is that wherever the consumption point is there, that is where the generation also should take place. So that would really enhance the complete efficiency, right? Secondly, it avoid all the losses. Then it's then and there it is consumed, right? So if you look at our policy perspective, it basically need to support this activity. Off campus, yes, I don't deny that it has got its own challenges, but on campus had to be looked at a little differently. When India set up the target for 40 gigawatt of rooftop solar, where are we today? We are just hardly about 6.5 gigawatt.
Right.
just around 15% vis-a-vis if you compare the same thing with ground mount system, right? So here is where the focus has to be more than the policy, over the policymakers and the regulatory commissions of each of the states have to contribute how this can be improved, how they can push this rooftop solar market, especially for C&I and other consumers as such. So the one part is that we started with 1 megawatt of net metering in most of the states. That there came that to the December 31st, everything cut down to 10 kilowatt net metering up to 10 kilowatt and beyond, which is a gross metering. This is a complete 4 to 6 months. There was a complete lull in the business, right? Then again there was a lot of representation. It brought back to a 500 kilowatt. Even today, there are certain states are not very clear whether it's going to be at 500 kilowatt or 1 megawatt level. Gross metering is going to be in the gross metering is going to be imposed, or net billing, net feed-in tariff, whatnot. I mean, every state in India, we are very, very special. Every state is like a country in India, and we have our own regulatory commissions and then our own policy. See, what impacts is that the customers who wanted to invest for their own requirements, because of this policy uncertainty, they are delaying the decision, right? Which eventually is pulling the overall growth down, and this is also impacting the job market, job opportunities. There are several system integrators. They are not able to move forward because of the policy uncertainty. So this is where we want these policymakers to take a holistic view, look at it in the long term, next 4-5 years. Right? Let us have a stable policy which will enable this. There will be a growth. More so when last 2 years have been lost. You have shown in your graph itself how the rooftop solar got impacted in the current year and the last year. So there has to be a push given to this. So the only way is make a policy more certain for at least for 3 to 5 years. Don't keep changing every now and then.
Right. Karthikeyan, you mentioned there was a lull for 4 to 5 months. Let's assume the worst case scenario and net metering not being available to the C&I consumers across the country. What kind of impact on the rooftop market do you see? Any ballpark numbers, the decline in annual capacity addition or the market potential? As you mentioned, we have a target for 40 gigawatt. We have around 6-7 gigawatt installed. What is your estimates in the worst case scenario?
So what would happen is that moment, assuming that net metering is not going to be there for C&I customers. Even within C&I customers, we should look at it to 2 buckets. One is that SME, another one is large C&I, right? Large C&I consumption is generally in the more than megawatt level, right? So there it may not affect to that extent, and so long as they are 24/7, even Sundays they are working loads, then it can always be optimized on the capacity, and then accordingly can be done. Where that impact is going to be major is going to be in the SME, right? SME. Moment the net metering is removed, not all the SMEs are 24/7. The Sunday load alone is 15% of their overall, right? So 52 Sundays. So what would they do if the net metering is not there? Can they optimize the size, right? And will that be still able to give them the return on investment? So that's a big question, right? So SMEs will start looking at elsewhere, where else they can control their input cost. See, today power is one of the major RMC content, right? So that's the reason that because of the drop in prices of solar compared to what it was 3-4 years ago, and anyway now it is going up. But despite that, there is a compelling reason, economical reason is there, and plus the AD benefit, which makes them to invest. And there are companies who offer them the financial support also. There is a financial solutions also there. Financial products are available. So with that, they're able to use this for implementation in SME segment. Moment the net metering is not there, then it will become like what is happening in Tamil Nadu, right? What is happening in UP and what is happening in West Bengal. So the offtake will be limited. So a customer whose consumption, maybe sanction load is, let us say, 500 kilowatt, but their consumption is varying in nature, more so in, let us say, in automotive component manufacturing companies, with the CNC machines, load is highly fluctuating. So then they need to start looking at only to the optimum level of solar, which may be 100 kilowatt, 200 kilowatt, right? So there will be a complete reduction from 500 kilowatt, which they could have gone ahead if the net metering was there. With the no net metering, then it dropped down to 150 to 200 kilowatt. So drastically, almost about 60% there will be reduction, right? So that is one, and plus Sunday. So your return on investment today, if it is 4 to 5 years, it is going to go up by another 15 to 20%. So there again, they will start looking at which project gives me better IRR. So even that 40% of the customers, they will start relooking at. So SME business is the one it's going to majorly get impacted.
Okay. Adarsh, I'll come to you next. Given the state of uncertainty, the state of flux we are in right now, are there still any states, consumer segments that look attractive? And Karthikeyan mentioned about UP, where net metering is not available for CI consumers. How are such states being looked at from the installer's point of view, from the developer's point of view?
Thanks for the question, Vidul. So I would like to expand the question a little bit from the way you asked it, as in if not UP or which other attractive states, to what is going on as a whole in the market. Now, what we have to understand is that these things which are happening right now in the marketplace on a state-by-state basis, completely agree with Karthikeyan that there is a lot of flux on the regulatory side. The states are doing their own thing, and sometimes even deviating away from the Electricity Act in letter and or spirit. That creates a certain amount of uncertainty, and I completely agree with Karthikeyan that there is a problem where SMEs would be more impacted, and it's the SMEs which actually need the savings arguably a bit more than the larger enterprises, right? Completely agree with Karthikeyan on that. So there is a need to reduce the policy uncertainty. What we are, if we take a step back from which state is the better state to act in or to move into, I will describe it in two broad answers. One is, what is the vision for the energy system of the future? Unfortunately, there is no one articulating vision as some of the other countries in the world have articulated. There is a vision, stated or unstated, in many countries, which is getting realized. There is the FERC 2222, which has come up in the US, which is allowing all distributed renewable energy sources to come in and play into the wholesale power market. There is in Germany, for example, it's already a very, very stable grid, in spite of having more than 700-800 generators. And actually, if you include the residential generators, prosumers, it is millions of generators, actually, more than 1.7 million residential systems connected to the grid, right? Now, the way a developer can respond, now to answer the question directly, is in the short term by offering more and more allied services. So, for example, rooftop alone is not going to be enough. It depends on the sector that you inhabit or the client segment that you're serving. But if you're serving larger, mid-sized and larger commercial and industrial clients, as we do in our company at Sunsource, then the focus is on, in addition to supplying behind the meter power, which I guess what we are referring to when we talk about rooftop. In addition to behind the meter, you get into open access. In addition to open access, you start looking at storage-based solutions and trading-based solutions. And Rahul will completely agree that it cannot just be about electricity, right? It is about energy efficiency. It is also about demand-side management. It's also about looking at the energy problems that the client is facing as a whole and solving those problems. The developer cannot stay hung up on his issues and his thought process. It has to be more about solving the client's problems, the commercial and industrial client's problems, right? So that's kind of the broad tack that we are taking at Sunsource as well. But at the end of the day, it is more about what is the articulated vision for the grid, whether it is more of a decentralized system or more of a decentralized and prosumer-based system, solving prosumers' requirements and issues, rather than the problems of legacy systems and distribution companies. There's no disrespect intended there, right? Distribution companies have solved a lot of problems over decades and decades. It just so happens that they are in a situation where they're not unable to recover all their dues unless they do some energy trading as well. They are put into that position. But examples are out there where if the government of India takes a proactive stand and creates a way for the distribution companies to be thoroughly and fairly compensated, then there is a way forward towards a vision where it's a largely decentralized grid, where prosumers have alternatives, where prosumers are able to take a stand and optimize their energy systems. And it doesn't just have to be about electricity. It can be about the whole bouquet of services and energy demands that they have. And they can talk to the energy service providers like ourselves and others in the marketplace. So I'll stop there.
Rahul, I'll come to you. Adarsh mentioned about some value-added services that need to be offered to the consumers. I would quickly like to know your views on the 500 kilowatt limit, its impact, and also, are you seeing any rush from the consumers in states which are yet to adopt this new limit of 500 kilowatt? And are those consumers only looking at rooftop solar, or they are looking into getting value-added services as well?
Thanks, Mridul. I think first I just would like to take a step back and very important, pertinent points both Adarsh and Karthikeyan have raised, which I want to just address. First, I think the main issue here that why are we seeing this policy uncertainty, say around net metering, etc., where the discoms are involved, and very quickly, and it's not like as if the central government are not interested to fix it. You have the Uday scheme, etc., coming up, to recapitalize discom, improve their rating, etc. But in a country like India, it is more of a socio-political decision how the discoms are managed. You have a certain section of the population, you can call them low-income group farmers, etc., to whom you have to give subsidized free power, and you can't do away with that. None of the governments. I mean, the latest government in Punjab has come. First announcement is free power to farmers again. Okay, and then you have a set of customers, that's commercial, industrial clients, SMEs, etc., which though is with respect to number of customers is very less, but the volume that they consume and the profitability that they add to the discom is tremendous. It's very, very high. So I think the challenge is that we all here in this panel are providing solutions to this high-paying, high-margin-making consumer segment of the discom, right? So they might be consuming only 30-40% with respect to kilowatt hour, but they might be almost contributing 70-80% to their profitability, to their EBITDA. So the first statement is, so this is, I think, the core issue, because of which we would continue to see this. Because I'll be frank, I've been in this sector, since now almost a decade. Earlier wind, now solar, and the same question, same stuff, which is happening in year after year, conference after conference. That is with respect to the policy uncertainty. So I think that's one a crux of the matter. But I think where we can do a lot better is that not only due to COVID, but even before that, since 2019, state after state, when you make ad hoc policy or announcement, it actually just puts the market into a tizzy. Like 2019, there was no COVID. Maharashtra announces that there can be something happening on the net metering, gross billing side. One whole quarter is gone because all contracts are put on hold. Customers want to know, what is happening. I mean, Mr. Anand will not like to get into a contract with this regulatory uncertainty, right? And then COVID happened. We all know that the sector has been, quite badly hit. Numbers show that. And the problem is that the real installers, O&M companies and small EPC companies, where the bulk of the jobs are, they are the first companies who get very badly impacted. So actually, you're having a lot of job losses, that's typically happening. And I was seeing, one of the topics we would like to discuss is on the BCD side. But while we are discussing the BCD side, we have another cat out of the bag, which is the change in GST in module pricing, right? Now, just imagine that in a sector which is already reeling under so much of stress, you have this kind of tremendous policy uncertainty. There is just no way you'll be able to reach a commercial landing with any kind of a customer, even say if it's a government where you have a change in policy clauses. So now what we'll have is, because of this net metering, because of BCD, because of the GST issue, customers would like to take it slow, because what we're offering is not mission critical. Their operations won't stop. It's a good to do, but it's not mission critical. So that delay, etc., is a kind of coming in, Mridul. Now, coming to the topic of the 500 kilowatt and its implication. First of all, I think the writing is on the wall that if it is 500 kilowatt, a huge segment of C&I customer who can utilize solar, who can decarbonize, help India meet its renewable goals, reduce the forex issue with respect to import of coal, gas, etc. from abroad. This is going to take a hit, because most of the industries, as Mr. Karthikeyan said, you might get good load for 5 days or 6 days, but the 7th day, you will have a loss. And even 1 day a week is 52 days you're talking about in a year. It's almost 17% kind of a generation is off. So commercially, it puts things in a TC. So yes, we are. So I think the way the sector has to respond is, by technological innovation, what you call the value-added services, etc. And here also, I think we as a sector are a bit lacking. For last 4-5 years, we all are talking about storage, hybrid, can we do distributed storage, etc. And the fact of life is that unless it meets a price point, I'm not even talking about the technical aspects of the storage and battery. Unless it reaches a price point, you can't substitute 6 rupee, 7 rupee grid tariff with solar plus storage. It's only diesel or petrol that it can be a kind of remove. So we need to look at solutions that do you use the excess energy to create chilled water for a plant's process like a dairy or a pharma company, or do you use that excess energy to create hot water for a certain kind of a process? So the way to store this excess energy is not only with respect to storage, right? So that's where the technical understanding, the understanding of the customer segment processes becomes very important, where you need to convert electricity into thermal or into a cooling, etc., so that at least it doesn't go waste, which is happening, right now. So for this, another important aspect is the digitization. That how you get the data, you assess the data, etc. So what I would say is that we're all focusing only on the electrical side of it, but there are various other places in a customer's premises where you can, transform this energy and use it and at least reduce some loss instead of, having 100% loss.
Right. Okay. But just going back to my question, Rahul, do you see any rush in installations coming over the next few months before the 500 kilowatt limit is adopted across the states?
First is, I think the first part of the question, with respect to rush, I definitely see that customer, and I don't think it's only rush because of the 500 kilowatt aspect, but it's also because businesses are back. You see most of the sectors, they're saying the next 2-3 months consumption will be on the upside. So that's one reason as well. And the exuberance is there. But what is happening is that is getting dampened because of this regulatory uncertainty. Like, for example, right now, nobody can say that this 500 kilowatt limit, how many states are going to implement? Right. In what way are they going to implement? Karnataka has a way of doing it. We're seeing Rajasthan has a way of doing it. Maharashtra is giving some feelers here and there. But the moment you do that, you take things a bit easy, right? So you have exuberance, but I don't see contracts closing quite quickly. And even if they are closing, post-signing, you're seeing a lot of, stress and discussion coming up with the customer because, a few clauses just get opened up.
Okay. Rahul mentioned that all of the states, many states are taking their own path to the 500 kilowatt limit. Ashwin, I would like to come to you. There have been many attempts by the central government to bring uniformity, not just in the rooftop segment, but the overall open access market as well. Do you see the latest attempt to be yielding any different results this time? Would it be successful? Will the states be able to bring in uniformity this time around?
Yeah, thanks, Mridul. I think I've been listening very closely to all the comments before, and as Rahul said, he's been here a decade. I've been looking at this sector for slightly longer than that, but this policy uncertainty is sort of the core and center of the issue. The economics makes sense on paper, but people are willing to put up money. There's finance, EPC teams are there, but what if the contract opens tomorrow? What's the certainty on that? What's the recourse to any disagreements? And this is where I think I would like to sort of reiterate what my colleague Ann said in the earlier session on open access as well, that policy and regulation, we need to look long term. We need to make it much more realistic and rounded. We cannot be looking at renewable energy or rooftop or captive or solar in isolation and saying, how can this be made bankable for the next quarter? We need to look at the sector as the whole. The DISCOM is the big elephant in the room, and unless you address the concerns of the DISCOMs, we may say they are inefficient, they have high losses, they have past liabilities, but that is the reality. As Rahul said, the socio-political and the political economy is a reality, and the policy making process needs to consider that front and center. If we keep carving out things like give me an exemption for ISTS, give me an exemption for rooftop or net metering without banking charges, so on and so forth, I don't think renewable energy or solar or even rooftop will go in a long way. Now, coming to your question, I think there is a serious issue also of jurisdiction. We have seen the open access rules, or you have seen the captive rules, which are stuck in the draft stage for a very, very long time. And unless there is a strong effort of consensus building across states and really getting them on board with some form of a grand bargain where their real day-to-day concerns are managed and are addressed in the true spirit of things, until that happens, you will not see policy implemented in a way that Rahul says you can have a contract signed, but then another clause is opened 2 days from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now. We have seen litigation in the coal sector over decades. So we really need to look beyond that and do a grand bargain where consensus building takes place, where there are incentives for states and regulators and the DISCOMs to move in the direction that we think is right. For that, we really need to come out with a fair risk and risk reward framework, which take into consideration the concerns of all stakeholders. So that would mean, what is a fair banking arrangement? What is a fair charge for all the grid services that rooftop solar or open access or captive uses? So we really need to look long term. What are effective standby charges? Because as Vinay said in the opening session, we can have 130 gigawatts of open access or on CNI demand in the next 10 years. For that to be realistically implemented, we really need a policy framework which looks long term, and you cannot have the center and even in case of this consumer rights rules, they first said 10 kilowatts, then there was a hue and cry, they've made it 500, but the fine print is it's not mandatory. It's for the states which don't have any net metering or rules in place. Then they at least have to give 500 kilowatts. So I don't see why states need to, as you're suggesting, need to go to 500 kilowatts. They can have it 1 megawatt, 2 megawatts. They can have any size. Our broader suggestion is you really need to give the consumer the choice of net metering, gross metering, net feed in, behind the meter with or without storage, without any capacity limit, as long as grid services, including provider of last resort, standby charges, banking charges, are appropriately valued and paid for in the long run.
Ashwin, I'll come back to you on the win-win situation which can be implemented for all the stakeholders. I'll quickly move on to the second segment, the technology and business models. And I think we are running behind quite a bit, so I'll request everyone to be precise in their responses. Arijit, I would like to understand modules being one of the technology piece in the entire rooftop system. What kind of products is LONGi offering specifically for the rooftop segment? As we are seeing, there are all the module manufacturers are now coming out with very large sized modules. So are these modules suitable for the rooftop segment?
The objective is very clear, that to generate some amount of energy within a certain amount of area. So to do that, slowly, the technologies are evolving, as we have seen that we have evolved from poly to monocrystalline technology, and now we are in P-type PERC technology. Will be slowly moving towards N-type TOPCon technology, and also adaptation of bifacial modules are something that we are seeing are actually happening. And LONGi, one of those very rare company who has already shipped more than 10 gigawatt of bifacial modules across the globe. So clearly, the shift is now from P-type PERC monofacial to P-type PERC bifacial, and soon it will be towards N-type. Now, when it comes to the rooftop installations, the size growing, the power bin size of modules growing every day is a concern, especially when the size of the module is also growing, and it's like you join two modules, it will become more than 1 kilowatt. So whether it is advisable or not, that's question. But LONGi as a company, and also some of other eminent manufacturers, have decided to stay with certain technology which are feasible in their current carrying capacity, in the dielectric strength of the cells are. This is something that we have decided, that we have limited ourselves with M10 wafers. M10 wafer is 182 mm by 182 mm wafers, which generates about 13 to 14 amps current, and which is not in the very higher side. Some of our peer competitors are going with 210 wafers, which are not at all suitable for especially rooftop installations. And we have seen in many cases the strength, the physical strength of those modules are also not very suitable for withstanding wind loads and all. So I think some of the companies like us who have decided that our boundary analysis says that we will stick with 182 mm wafer and will not go towards higher and higher. It's not bigger is not always the better. So, but at the same time, we will improve, or we will work on our technology innovation to improve the power bins, and also we'll try to improve the other things. It's not just power bin. LONGi have always shown that the degradations can also be worked upon, because it's not the first day generation that you bank upon. You also have to see how the module performs over the 25 years, and their degradation is a big factor. We have shown the industry how from 0.7 it can be brought down to 0.55, and then everybody follows us. Now with our new innovation, which is TOPCon, I think we will see higher efficiency, better degradation, but yes, it will not be of 1 kilowatt. We will be within 500 to 600 watt peak modules. So that's something that we are seeing, that we will have to limit ourselves somewhere. We cannot go beyond certain limit.
Right. Sorry to keep you waiting, Anand. I'd like to know your preference in terms of business models from the point of view of a consumer. Is CapEx better or OpEx? And is there any need for any innovation in the existing business models? But before you answer that, I would like to understand what are the sustainability goals of the Mahindra Group, and what role does rooftop solar play in those targets?
Thanks, Murugan. Thanks for the. I was listening to all the experts in the panel. To answer your last questions about Mahindra sustainability goals, we have all kinds of ESG goals in place. I will focus on the E goals, that is the environmental goals mostly. As you know that the group is aspired to become carbon neutral by 2040. The executive chairman, Mr. Mahindra, has declared that, and every group company is created an action plan to how to achieve the carbon neutrality. The first action the group companies took is the committing the science-based target, which is connected to the Paris Accord, 1.5 degrees Celsius, below 2 degrees Celsius, or either 2 degrees Celsius scenario. As of now, around 20 group companies have committed to science-based target, and 17 companies got their targets approved. So every company has got a target to reduce their scope 1, 2, 3 emissions. Main action plan to achieve SBT as well as the carbon neutrality is definitely energy efficiency, and the next part is the renewable energy. We have committed to EP100, the 5 group companies, Mahindra and Mahindra Limited, Mahindra Vehicle Manufacturers, Swaraj Engines, Mahindra Holidays, and Mahindra Heavy Engines have committed to double their energy productivity in the next 25 years. It will definitely help us to achieve our SBT as well as the neutrality goal. Mahindra Heavy Engines Limited could able to achieve their goals within a span of 4 years in March 2020. But because of pandemic, again, it has dropped from say 100% to 98%. But I'm sure Heavy Engines as well as the other companies will gear up their EP100 goals as well. Formally, Mahindra Holidays have committed to RE100. Though other group companies have not formally committed to RE100, but we have internal goals set to become 100% renewable. The interim goal is to reach RE50 by 2025. In addition to energy and the emissions goals, we have goals related with the water as well as the waste management. We aspire to become a water positive group, and the zero waste to landfill certification, or how we can achieve the zero waste to landfill concept or the circular economy concept in all our locations is being placed. 24 locations are certified for ZWL. These are the couple of sustainability goals taken at Mahindra level. As I mentioned, energy efficiency and renewable energy are the main drivers to achieve our science-based target as well as the carbon neutrality target. Yes, we do see all the options, CapEx, OpEx, both the options we do add. But the preferable model is the OpEx as of now. And as you know that in 2016, Mahindra and Mahindra Limited declared that their carbon pricing of $10 per tons of CO2. So we have a commitment to invest some amount of money in the sustainability related projects. So definitely the funding is being done through carbon pricing model for energy efficiency and a renewable energy model. But we look for more different options. And we have a mix of renewable energy in place. We have investments in wind as well as solar. The discussion which was happening just before, we also look for the favorable policies which as a commercial and industrial consumers we go for. See, we have a budgeting cycle. The budgeting cycle sometimes it starts somewhere at a fixed time, somewhere in the October or November. And at that time, we review the policies available maybe for the renewable energy. And at that time, the business decisions has been taken. So as a commercial and industrial consumer, we expect that we should have the favorable lucrative policies so that we will go ahead for installation of our renewable as well as the emission reduction goals. Another point I would like to mention over here is that we have existence footprint across pan-India. A few years ago, these locations at North India, the tariff at the North India is quite less. So we were struggling to how to go ahead installation of renewable energy power over there. But definitely we overcome looking at our emission and energy reduction targets. And but I would like to say the preference business model currently, both the options is open for us. OPEX as well as CAPEX. So we are also looking at different kind of technologies available in the market.
Anand, sorry to cut you off. I'll come back to the technology and system configuration in the next segment very quickly. Adarsh.
Thanks, Prudel.
Yeah. Adarsh, I'd like to get your comments. Anand mentioned OPEX is the preferred model, but we are seeing that OPEX share of OPEX has been declining in the new capacity additions. I would like to understand very quickly from you, is this trend being pushed from the consumer side or the developer side? And what future do you foresee for the OPEX model? Very, very quickly.
Thanks for the question, Mridul. Actually, OPEX, if you take open access into account, is the much larger contributor overall to the capacity being added for the commercial and industrial sector. So OPEX has gone down, specifically talking about the rooftop sector. But if you look at commercial and industrial as a whole, especially the non-SME or the larger enterprise portion that Mr. Karthikeyan had delineated, then we are looking at a bigger contribution of OPEX. So OPEX has not gone anywhere. The other thing that I would point out is that state to state, it varies a bit. So in certain states, you can do more open access. In certain states, you can do less. You can do more behind the meter. And in certain states, you can do both. So it is going to be a state-by-state story. Again, going back to what Rahul had mentioned. So we take our calls based on which states are positive. And the other thing that is there to keep in mind there is that which states support OPEX, it changes from year to year, depending on the state imperatives.
Okay. Rahul, I would like to come to you. So in the international market, do you see any innovations happening in the business models and any innovations, any options in the international market that can be implemented in India over the next few years?
I think, Mridul, yes. The answer to that is yes, and I would say at BCIS, we are driving that change, in Asia. We call that concept as EaaS, that is energy as a solution, right? Now, when you look at a C&I customer, their goal is to achieve sustainability, that is to decarbonize, and that process, have a reduction in cost. Many of the customers are also aware that beyond a point, when they hit 60-70% mark of decarbonization, beyond that, the technologies available might not be cost effective. They might have to pay a little bit more to go green. So that's the prioritization some of the large MNCs are doing with whom we work, globally. But I think the business model that is coming forward is that MNCs are looking for us to go to them with technologies which will help them reduce their electricity, both from a generation perspective, the electricity consumption from a demand management perspective. So there's a lot of models coming up on the energy efficiency side. A decade back, it didn't take off, what we used to call ESCO or a RESCO. The reason being, it was very difficult to do the baselining because digitization was not available. You always used to get into a fight that, did this energy cost saving happen because of my technology or your reduction in load, right? So now that digitization is, solving, that problem. And the third is that, I think we have a good session coming up tomorrow where we discuss that almost 30-35% of emissions are happening because of non-electricity based consumption. It can be, on-site furnace oil, fuel oil, PNG, etc. So each one of them needs a different technology to attack. So the idea is to give a holistic energy as a solution perspective, Mridul. But yes, for that, I think both the customers and the governments have to be, very proactive. To make this happen. Just one more point on the OPEX side in business, I would like to add to others. So yes, I think I completely echo his sentiment. There has been a bit of aberration because people are not very clear on the regulatory aspect, and hence things are getting delayed. There are COVID-related protocols, so the timelines are getting extended. So I believe that this is just a blip in the Indian, rooftop sector, because all said and done, even now the cheapest source of electricity in solar is rooftop solar, where also, the regulatory so-called harakiri is the least, possible. It's just the question of volume. You can't give huge volumes there. So that, along with open access, will continue to expand. And I just think that these 2 years are a blip.
Okay. We'll move to the next and the last segment of system configuration. So I'll first move to Arijit, as modules are the major components of the system. Arijit, how aware are the consumers about the module technologies, and how involved they are in selection of the module technology for their systems?
This is a very dicey question because they're all very much aware about technologies, and they sometimes understand more than us. Yes, they do a lot of research, but most of the time we see that they forget to understand the basics. Means why and how the large scale solar companies, they are selecting their modules. Whoever is working on rooftop, normally we used to see that they were always following the utility scale developers trend and how they are selecting their modules. Was these days, because of lot of influences and lot of cross talks between the sales people, lot of rooftop developers, they get confused. What we always tell our customer that understanding one thing is very important, that how vertically integrated a manufacturer is, and that is very important. I think in qualitative way, not always in economics, but in qualitative way, it is very important. So that's how we try to make our customer understand that when you choose a company who are bankable, who are maximum integrated in a maximum possible way, and they are the company of choice of utility scale developers. These are the things that our rooftop customers can follow, because they don't have infrastructure, or they don't have much of bandwidth in checking how the module is being manufactured and inspections and all. So it's always better to follow the experts, and also some basic criteria that how the company is bankable, how much integration it is, 100% vertically integrated, or they are 80% vertically integrated, how they are, and also how which are the companies, which are the module manufacturers are getting maximum preference by utility scale developers. So these are the few factors that basically rooftop developers should actually think.
Okay. Arijit, very quickly, if you could respond, are you seeing customers asking for bifacial modules?
We are seeing the increase of inquiry in multiple fold, because right now utility scale means in next year most of the utility scale inquiries are on bifacial. And although in rooftop it doesn't make much of sense, but yes, there are bifacial gains. And in coming time, because of the economy of scale, the price gaps will also come down. And we are seeing that the inquiries are increasing day by day. And ground mounted, it's definitely increasing in multiple fold. Rooftop is also picking it up.
Okay. Karthikeyan, again, very briefly, because we are almost out of time. Are you seeing demand for behind the meter and storage based systems? Because there are states which are now offering TOD based incentives for net billing systems as well. Are you seeing demand for such systems, and in which states?
Yeah, see what's happening is now slowly, while C&I there is still to catch up. Already the hybrid system started taking kind of initiative in most of the states, and especially the residential segments, and then even the micro establishments. We started positioning hybrid inverters, maybe up to 20-25 kilowatt. So this compared to the earlier what it was. If you look at the lithium-ion batteries, right? So now the prices started coming down. It's not to the level of where we can really position with respect to DG plus solar. Still, there is a gap, but however, still, if you look at somewhere from $400 per kilowatt hour, now it has come down to, it came down to 300, 250, we are hovering around 200. So the lot of myth also is around still from the consumer point of view. They start comparing the lithium-ion batteries vis-a-vis the tubular batteries. They look at the same ampere hour. If there are two companies bidding for it, if somebody is offering, let us say, 1 megawatt hour of let us tubular battery, they compare the same way for lithium-ion also, which is not same because the power density in lithium-ion is much better than the conventional batteries. So that education is going on, and we are also trying to do our best in technically, equipping them. So there is a movement. We also done already 1 megawatt hour project, right? And now for the residential customers, they started moving towards lithium-ion batteries. It's a matter of time. It's getting into the behind the meter scenario also. And there are customers who comes to us that at least mitigate my energy consumption during the peak hours, right? And wherever power outage is more, if I run my DG set with the current diesel cost, my cost is anywhere from 25 to 27 rupees. Can you look at a solution for that? So we are able to work out a solution for them, and this requirement is going in the increasing trend. What it was 1 year ago and now, there is an increase. And there are certain customers who doesn't want to rely on the grid at all. There are customers who come to us, please give me a system with batteries where I don't have to depend on the grid at all, because they have a very sensitive loads. They have momentary breakdown. Like I will not be able to compare with the data center, but it is the next level of critical application, where they say that, no, I would like to have completely based on the batteries and DG, right, rather than relying on the grid, especially in the remote locations. So there are clear sign of the inquiries going up for the battery-based systems.
Okay. Anand, I would like to understand the consumer perspective here. Are you considering behind the meter and storage equipped systems, and whether storage is currently viable or not? And what are your future plans with respect to these system configurations?
Yeah, I was talking about the technologies available in the market. As a commercial and industrial consumer, whatever new technologies will be available, we are open to try it out. From the storage point of view, I think we should look at the three possibilities. Three drivers should be looked at: space, the hazard out of it, as well as the economics of scale. I don't know. Definitely, if all these three drivers makes sense, we may go for the storage part as well. As a business, we have factories in place, we have commercial buildings, and we have the resorts in place. The business model or the aesthetics is different. And if I talk about, say, resorts, I can't go for the rooftop installations as it is, because I don't know whether it is possible to install a rooftop solar over there or not. But from the storage front, if we could get say high density batteries, or which can give a backup during the night time to avail the TOD benefit, or maybe on the weekly off or on the holidays, the most of the technical solutions are welcome. We are also looking at the other technical solutions. As I mentioned, we have sustainability goals, like say on the water front as well as from the renewable energy front. So we have the large manufacturing plants like say Igatpuri, Chakan or Nashik. We have a huge water reservoir. So if we could get able to a technology like of say solar floating systems, it's a most welcome by the consumer like us. We are also looking at the technologies like say solar films, which can help us to install on our green buildings. Yeah.
Okay. Rahul, very quickly, I would like to understand from you, what are the technology trends you are seeing in the international markets? For example, I believe microinverters are prevalent in the international market. any other technology trends that you are seeing in the international markets that can be or that will be implemented in the Indian market in the near future?
So so the answer is yes, and I think I'll speak more from a C&I a perspective, rooftop perspective. So I think on the modules, Arijit is the most learned person here, and he has already commented. So yes, one is on the inverter size. You continue to have that debate whether you want to go for a larger a larger string inverter or a micro inverter, depending upon cost, redundancy, application, DC fire, okay, or you want to cut off the circuit, etc. So the debate is on both the sides. Most of the places we're not able to go for microinverters, primarily from a cost perspective, and it's not like they give a much better generation, but yes, they sometimes tend to make the systems much more digital. You're able to get much more data and take a call. So again, it's a techno-commercial call, if you ask me. But definitely on the residential side, where if even one module underperforming, impacts the system quite a bit. So on the residential side, definitely, they are picking up. The second, I would say, Mridul, is on the BOS, and in the BOS also is more on the racking system. So what we call the model mounting structure, etc. So there continues, people are trying to innovate how to make those more standardized, trying to segment the roofs, etc. And at least now we are seeing that, something like a CalZip clip lock roofs, for large industrial, commercial customers, instead of a standing steel, where you either need to, puncture it or you need to paste the model mounting structure on that. So those kind of changes, even the customers are making, because, right, like Mr. Anand is saying, that many of the resorts cannot take rooftop solar, so they will have Mangalore tiles, or they'll have thatched roof, something like that. So it's also a question of aesthetic. But then, when a roof replacement or something new is happening, people are consistent that, to put a roof which is easy and compatible with the racking system, and also it prevents leakage, etc. So a lot of innovation is happening on that front. And lastly, I would say on the balance, BOS part, not on the electrical side, but definitely on the digitization side, right? Everybody has a monitoring system, etc. But now it's about, you have a lot of data with respect to radiance, performance, etc. And there are multiple factors in a rooftop solar plant which impacts the performance. The client's harmonics, power factor, what kind of a load imbalances they have. And if you have this data, you can, improve the performance of the rooftop plant. So a lot of those predictive algorithms are coming in. So where the electrical subject matter expertise is getting married, to this digitization trend. So a lot of value is there as well.
Okay. We have discussed a number of things: policy flip-flop, charges being introduced by the states, business models, how the technology is being changed, system configuration, preferences of the consumers. The final question I would like to ask Ashwin, given all of these variables, given all of this flux and uncertainty, is there any win-win arrangement that can be implemented so that the 40 gigawatt target that planned, it could be met in the near future?
Yeah, thanks, Mridul. I think the one big thing that with MERC has done very right and Maharashtra has done is you need to give the sector and all stakeholders in the sector time to adapt. You cannot have policy and regulatory changes very often, and even when you make them, you need to give a window of 6 months or a year. So Maharashtra has said whatever new charges, whenever they come into effect, will be only after 2000 megawatts are installed. So everyone has a clear window. There is a clear provision that up to 10 kilowatts these charges won't be applied. So One is you need to give ample time so that people can plan. The second is, I think, what we have been suggesting to regulators across the country is to have a tiered approach. So on one hand, give the consumer full choice over the type of accounting framework with no size limit. However, you need to have a tiered approach of a different accounting or a banking and a charging framework for, say, something up to small systems, residential systems up to 10 kilowatt, between 10 to 100 and greater than 100. So what we have been suggesting is, you allow banking on an annual basis for very small systems, on a monthly basis for medium systems, and for really large systems, you can have a 15-minute accounting. Similarly, on banking charges, you can have something like linked to TOD, or roughly 1 to 1.5 rupees for wherever banking is allowed. And the buyback rate also needs to be much more realistic, given that discoms can presently buy any amount of solar power at 2.5, 3 rupees. So the buyback rate for any excess also needs to be at 2.5 to 3 rupees for that system to be really realistic. So that is the kind of framework we have been suggesting to FOR and all regulators. And I think that is something that the stakeholders and the industry people need to debate and see where can a consensus be built as to what is an appropriate banking charge, or a banking framework, or a buyback rate which is acceptable to the stakeholders at large. And that can really let go of these smaller distractions in terms of limiting some size arbitrarily, not having procedural hurdles. Once those things are really streamlined, we still feel that there can be a large growth in this sector.
Okay. I'm afraid we are completely out of time, but I think the questions posed by the attendees have been covered in one way or the other in our discussions. So I'll quickly mention 4 or 5 points which came out of this very useful discussion. The business case for rooftop systems remains intact, even though there is an uncertainty regarding the policy and regulations. The uncertainty has created some delay in the minds of the consumers. They are not willing to close the contracts. That remains. But to remedy that, I think, as Ashwin just mentioned, there has to be a clarity, a long-term, medium to long-term clarity on adoption of the new changes. So that is very important. As many developers mentioned, it is no longer the solar rooftop itself. Many value-added service go with that. Consumers are looking for such value-added services, be it energy efficiency, digitization, or many others. How we can achieve growth over the next few years is through a win-win arrangement, addressing the DISCOM issues, addressing concerns of the consumers, installers as well. And I think the policy and regulatory changes will also pave way for new system configurations, be it behind the meter or storage, as and when they are economically viable. Thank you everyone for your time. Over to you, Ankita.